Hi everybody, how are you doing? It's Karen. I'm coming to you from the garden. I thought that was really nice to be able to be outside today, and my studio has been in the process of being painted anyway, so it's just better to be outside when we can. So last week we tried this. We tried this business of having a conversation, but Facebook kind of foiled us with their outage, I guess it was. So we didn't really have an opportunity to talk together. But yesterday, an article was published on theoldish.com. If you haven't been there and looked at it, you maybe should. And it was about the conversations that people have or don't have about driving. And it got me thinking about how many conversations there are that are of importance to us as we age, that we should be having, that we don't have. And, I'm in the process of thinking about some of those things too. So let me zero in on the one article that we published yesterday about driving, just to give you an idea. So this is the article, and it talks about, there we go. It talks about driving, and the AAA did a study, and almost 83% of older drivers say they've never spoken with anybody about their ability to drive safely. And another 15% only talk about that after they've had an accident. So, that's a pretty important conversation to be having. And that's kind of what got me thinking. Here at the Oldish, we're very big on empowerment, on being able to make the plans for yourself, being able to advocate for yourself. And part of that advocacy is having the wherewithal to have important conversations, to state your point of view very clearly, and to make appropriate arrangements, as opposed to not discussing it at all and just letting happen whatever happens. I'm not a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of being able to take charge of your own life, if you will. We talk about that a lot at the Oldish. So driving is one of those things. Moving to a home that works better for you is another one of those things. Having all your paperwork together, so your wills, your powers of attorney, is another conversation. The kind of funeral that you want for yourself, the way that you want an illness to be handled if you're unable to be awake and make those decisions for yourself is another way or another conversation that we don't tend to have. So, I'm just really anxious to hear from you and hear what kind of conversations you may have had with family and with friends, with your partner, to see what kind of arrangements you might be making or not making. Or are you the sort that just wants to let things happen as they happen and leave it to other people to make the decisions when that time comes? Talk to me about it and let me know what you have done or what you haven't done. There is no right or wrong. This is your life, and the fact that I'm a fan of advocacy doesn't mean you have to be. It just means that there are conversations that maybe you're not comfortable with. Maybe other people here that are comfortable and have had those conversations can give us some advice. I know that I've had the conversations with my children about what happens when I die. They know what kind of funeral I want and what kind of funeral arrangements I want. We haven't talked about driving, so I'm maybe in the same boat as a lot of you with that in mind. So I'm just going to switch to our Facebook page here and see if people are actually there leaving comments. Pardon me for ignoring you for a second. When we aren't in the studio and don't have all of the technology available, then this means that we're maybe not using things the way that we should be. And we're also outside, so that may make the, there we go. Now we're seeing it. So if any of you have anything to say about this, any comments to add, I can see that there are a couple of comments. Yay! That's awesome. How do we get these up on the screen is what I want to know, because, oh, there. My mother, can you see that? Click to view comments. My mother lost her permit after an accident. She was having problems before that, but refused to talk about it. She was in hospital a long time. Yes, that, the refusal to talk about it is what is really concerning to me. She became very depressed after the loss. Yes, that happens. She became very depressed. I hope you're seeing these comments on the screen the way that I am. She became very depressed after the loss of her car and driving permit. That is true. That can happen. And I know that we have published articles on the Oldish about that before, about the fact that people do get depressed when this gets taken away from us, this privilege of driving. But I feel that if we are able to make our own plans and advocate for ourselves, we can choose options that maybe help us. Yep, thank you, Sandra, for telling me. I appreciate that. I feel that if we can make these plans for ourselves, make the arrangements that suit us, make the compromises that suit us, we leave more things in our hands and less things in other people's hands. For instance, this business of selling your home and moving someplace where a home works better for you, perhaps with a view to stopping driving, then, if we choose to live someplace where there's transit that's accessible, that make arrangements with a taxi company or Uber or some kind of ride share, then it may not be perfect, because of course we're used to driving and taking our own lives into our own hands and doing what we want when we want. But it's far better than leaving it to the fates and perhaps having a car accident, as was suggested in a previous comment. And, her mother was in the hospital. So that means that other people are going to be making these arrangements. So what arrangements have all of you made for yourselves? Or have you? I'm in the process of thinking very seriously about selling my house and making a move that is better suited. Now, I feel like I'm good in my house for at least another 10 years. I'm 64, so I think, another 10 years probably. But how much do I want to tempt the fates? There are other options out there that may be better suited to me, that may maintain my independence, that may allow me to make other choices. What are you doing? Sandra, you live out in the country. I know where you live. You have a beautiful property out in the country, and you're good for lots and lots and lots more years, and maybe it's not even a discussion that you have thought about yet. I'm a generation older than you, so it's a little closer to me. As far as the driving piece is concerned, Sandra and I live in a rural environment that is, she's more rural than I am. I live in a town, but we have no public transit. Right now, I can walk to a lot of places. In the future, not so much. If I had knee issues or hip issues, or if I had a car accident and I was told I couldn't drive anymore, I would be pretty scuppered where I live, even though I'm a couple blocks off a main street. I can't walk to a grocery store comfortably. If something like that happened, I could not walk comfortably to a grocery store. We published an article a couple months ago that said that people will generally walk about 1,500 feet to get to where they want to. And there was a link in that article to a map finder where you could put in your address and you can see the circumference of 1,500 feet. When I did that for my address, I could get to a pharmacy. I couldn't get to my bank. I could get to a couple of restaurants. but a grocery store was way, way, way outside of any 1,500-foot comfort zone. Are there taxis? Yep, there are taxis, but there are only a couple. I mean, a couple of taxi cabs, not a couple of companies, a couple of taxi cabs to service this area. Is the cost of taxi within my budget? Does it offer me the freedom that I want? I don't know. I really haven't investigated it. So if I moved, there are probably other places that I could move to that would offer me benefits. No public transit here where I live. Yeah. Sandra, yes, definitely something we've talked about. You really, because you're way younger than me, Sandra. My parents are in their 70s, in-laws in the 80s. The time is coming. So that's a conversation, Sandra, that's interesting because that's a different perspective. That's a conversation that you get to have with your in-laws as opposed to for yourself. Different conversation. Are you finding your in-laws open to those kinds of conversations? Because a lot of people who are in their 70s and 80s aren't even open to that conversation. Don't want to talk about it, shut it right down. That's pretty rough. You know, when you can't, I think it's very nerve-wracking. It was very nerve-wracking for me when I was younger and my parents were in that position because there were certainly conversations they would not have. I'm not sure how my children feel about this, whether that these are conversations they're comfortable having, but I think because of the job I do and having this division of my company, it makes me a lot more open to having those kinds of conversations. I have to have the conversation about driving. I really do. Let's see here. It's not easy getting older and talking about... Right. This is true. It is not an easy conversation, but neither is it easy to lose your independence. Neither is it easy to be forcibly put in a position of having other people who are required to make those decisions for you. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road for me, where I really want to have that option available to me. I really want to be able to make those decisions for myself as long as I possibly can. Part of independence for me is making those choices. And the choices aren't easy. Absolutely. Do I want to leave my house? No, I don't. I love my house. It was built for me. I mean, it was an older house when I bought it, but I've had it renovated inside out and outside in exactly to my specifications. I don't want to leave it. However, there will come a time when I do have to leave it. And if we've talked about the window of opportunity here before. Everybody has a window of opportunity. And when that window closes, that is when other people start making decisions for you. Absolutely. So in making the decisions early enough, we can all actually keep that window of opportunity open longer. Now, provided other things don't happen, there are things that are out of our control. Illnesses come about. Other people have car crashes with us, not because we're older, but because they missed an intersection, or stuff happens that is out of our control that puts us in a place that we didn't know that we would be in. So to the extent that we can control things, that's where I want to see things controlled, in my control. So, those of you who have had those conversations, let us know what those conversations have been like. Were they conversations that may have been difficult to approach, but with some perseverance you got there with your parents, perhaps? Or maybe your children are pushing you to have these conversations. How are you feeling about that? Or are you the one that is initiating these conversations? I feel in my family like I'm the one that's initiating the conversations, but I read all these articles and I know what the potential is out there, both good and bad. So maybe I'm the one in my family that's pushing the conversations a little bit more. Anyway, it is absolutely an ongoing conversation, and maybe it's one that we can carry on after this live in the comments below, where we can solicit advice from one another. We can see what people's experiences have been. It doesn't have to be about driving. Driving is a really, really tough one. I know that every time we post an article about driving on the Oldish and I share it to the Facebook page, people are just up in arms. It's not us. We're not the bad drivers. It's the younger people. It doesn't matter. The statistics say what the statistics say, and at some point, those of us who are older are a lot closer to having to make those decisions than we were when we were in our 30s and 40s. So they are discussions that we should be having if we want to be proactive. There is the house moving one. There's the quitting working one. There's the travel question. And it's not so much a question of do we want to travel, but how do we travel more safely? How do we protect ourselves against illness if we're overseas? What kind of options do we need to be looking for when we're traveling? Those are discussions we can have with travel agents for sure. There are also discussions around, as I say, funeral arrangements, around documents. Do you have all of your powers of attorney in place, or are those difficult ones? Now, for me, I have my own company, so my powers of attorney extend beyond just the personal and the financial. They extend to business. And I know that for some of you who run your own businesses, you have to put those pieces in place as well. And it's not easy to think about because we all want to think we're 30. How many times have I said that before? A lot of times. But it's important to have those arrangements in place. I have employees who are expecting to be paid. How does that happen if I'm incapacitated? How does my company run and pay the bills and carry on its own business if I'm incapacitated? So the same can be said for your personal life. You know, how does your gas bill get paid? How does your hydro bill get paid? How does life carry on while it waits for you to recover and resume your role, essentially? So a lot of really important discussions to be had. As some of you will know, I am writing a course on preparing to age in place. And maybe these are some of the discussions that I need to include in that course. I just wrote a checklist and a conversation cheat sheet, if you will, the other day on some of these things, but I'm wondering how much further they need to go. Maybe there needs to be a cheat sheet if you run your own business, and it's stuff that I need to be aware of for my own business. So, there are a lot of conversations to be had about getting older and putting things in place. It does not mean the end of life. It really doesn't, even though you have to have those plans in place. This doesn't mean the end of life. I fully plan on living until I'm in my 90s, well into my 90s, older if I can. Hopefully I can do it in a healthy way. So, it just means having things in place to prepare for all of the eventualities. So anyway, I think that will be our show for today, unless anybody else has any more comments or advice to offer, things that they have been through. I'm really happy to listen to all of you and hear what your experiences have been. If you are watching this on replay later, leave your comments below in the comments and we can carry on the conversation. That's the thing that's really nice about Facebook and having this platform. We can have these conversations on an ongoing basis. So I will leave you all with those thoughts today. I hope you've enjoyed sitting with me in my garden. You can find us at facebook.com/The Oldish. Of course, our main website is theoldish.com. We are also on every social platform that you may participate in. Just Google or in the search engine for your preferred platform, search for The Oldish and you will find us there. But for now, I will love you and leave you and look forward to talking with you next week. I'm not sure if we'll be in our studio or not. I kind of like this sitting outside thing. It's kind of nice. But certainly we'll be back in our studio at some point, which has been freshly repainted, and we're getting new furniture, and we'll see you there or in our garden, depends on the weather. Until then, please do remember that it takes a village to age a senior. Take care, everyone.